Everyone in? Great.
Yeah, everyone's in now, Jean. Yes.
Good. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'm McFeeters. I'm chairing the zoning commission. I think there are about 40 people here and some people in the room down at Town Hall. We are going to start with privilege of the floor. I know Mark has a list of people who have signed up, and I see one hand raised on the Zoom, which is labeled as Zoning Kills Dreams, which we will add to the list, and I will Mark, and I see Cyrus's hand up as well. Mark, can you tell? Yes.
Ellen Harrison has her hand up.
And Ellen Harrison and Robert Meagle.
Yeah.
Hey, Jean,
Yes.
this is Bruce.
Bruce.
I'm trying to get in on computer and I am on my phone, but my computer says, please wait. The meeting host will let me in soon.
Okay, so Mark's probably doing that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
should come in.
Mark, can you tell me how many people are signed up?
It's about 7. I've got 7 here, Jean.
Okay, and I see 5 people on the line here, or 6. I'm going to give you their names in the order I've seen them, which is Zoning Kills Dreams, Cyrus, Ellen Harrison, Robert Meagle, Annie Crispell, and Linda. I doubt we will get to all of them because I'm limiting this to about 18 minutes tonight. And if you want more people to speak, please limit your remarks if you can, because we also have to get some work done this evening. So I'm going to alternate them. So Mark, can you give me the first person on that list?
Sure. That's Kim Wetzel. And Kim, if you could take the podium here.
Mr. Wetzel, as soon as you're ready.
As I get my jacket off, I'll be right there.
Okay.
I'm just going to introduce myself real quick. I'm Ernie Bales. I'm with the zoning commission.
Thank you for being here in person.
Well,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
For people speaking at town hall, I have a 3-minute timer here, and I'll try to warn you a little bit before it's up. So go ahead, Kim.
Okay, my name's Kim Wetzel, longtime resident, town of Caroline since 1970. Significant landowner, pay lots of taxes, generate a lot of revenue for the town through my businesses, of which there are 3. 3% of the 6% sales tax that I collect comes to the town. The other 3 goes to county, state, whoever. My big concern about this zoning thing is, do we really need it? Okay. I'm very much in the camp that thinks we do not need it. And I would put it to the town board. What precipitated this last go around? We had to go around the zoning 5, 7, however many years ago, and they decided they didn't want to do much with it. So what's precipitated this? Well, I've looked at the proposed zoning thing, and it's a thick document, many pages, many pages. They spent in the last half of last year $23,013.21 for a single consultant, just for one person to kind of give them some advice and so on and so forth. They budgeted $30,000 for this year, and that'll be gone much sooner. They'll end up budgeting more. That's not even talking about the money that they've spent, the money they've contracted for through the town attorney to kind of give them some guidance and advice. That's more thousands of dollars. And it's a little bit like they really don't have to act on the people that show up and speak to them. They nod and they give you lip service, maybe. You know, it's a little bit like small children, you know. Yeah, that's good, Johnny. Go ahead and sit down, have your dinner, you'll be fine. So, and I don't think, and I direct this in part to Mark because he's the only one here. I think you really need to give some serious thought to what the people are trying to tell you. And when I say you, I'm directing it to the town board, but you happen to be the only one I believe is present, so, you know. And of course, I guess Mr. Snow is, but he's being a little incognito over there, but it's good to see that some of the people that represent our government and the town government are actually here. And so, in any event. So one of my big concerns is we spent a lot of money on this and nobody within the town, on the town board has answered my question, which I proposed on occasion. Why are we doing this? What precipitated this? What got this started? So I would like the town to,
15 seconds.
thank you, to see if they could maybe give us some idea of why we really need this.
I agree.
So, thank you very much. Those 2 seconds that I had left, somebody else can pick this up.
Did you
Thank
say
you.
that you don't think we need it? And is wondering what precipitated it. I also want to recognize that Tim Murray is here as well from the town board. He's on Zoom, as am I this evening. The next speaker will be someone whose phone or computer is called Zoning Kills Dreams. Mark, could you open that?
I think he's
Could
on.
you identify yourself?
Hi, it's Holly McGee. I just want to say that the zoning draft is definitely not wanted or needed in this town. I want to read a little something I wrote up. Jean and zoning commission members, I thought long and hard about the questions I'm going to ask you tonight. Hopefully the cat doesn't have your tongues this time. I want to bring awareness to a certain section in the zoning draft that I know will have a negative impact on property owners in this town. I have several questions for you on this topic, but first I want to read a small section of the zoning draft so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Section 4.2, specific standards by zoning district. Number 12, linkages, creation of trail and pathway connections and linkage of protected open spaces are an important amenity desired in the town. As such, all open spaces required as part of any conservation subdivision shall be laid out to be adjacent to and linked with adjacent protected open spaces to the maximum extent feasible. Additionally, the review board may require pedestrian path, trails, or bike routes to be included in a subdivision or site plan design within or between parcels to connect any open spaces that may exist or be created. In doing so, plans, diagrams, or illustrations shall be reviewed upon by the review board as part of the subdivision or site plan approval process. So question 1, just in case we are interpreting this statement wrong, in your own words, could you please paraphrase this section of the draft? What exactly does it mean for property owners? Question 2, is there plans for a new trail to be built that Caroline residents are unaware of? If so, where will this trail be routed through and where will it start and end? Question 3, who will be responsible for legal issues as access trails are being utilized? For example, people being attacked by angry bulls, people getting zapped by electric fences, people twisting ankles or falling on ice. Is this a legal matter for the landowner or the town board? Question 4, I have talked to several landowners that live in other areas that have similar access trails. These people have stated that the walkers and bikers that use these trails do not respect the surrounding environment. Therefore, who will be responsible for all the garbage that builds up on these walkers and bikers? Because it is well known that these are the areas where folks like to throw their trash as they pass through residents' properties. Question 5, what does the phrase maximum extent feasible stand for? Do you plan to plow through residents' houses, garages, barns, sheds, fences, pastures, crops, or cornfields? Is this how you plan to make accessible pathways to streams, old railroad beds, access to other open space lands? The provision of fishing rights or provision of trails and trail linkages, or does this mean the zoning cops will be called on us if we don't comply, or both? Question 6, the section
Sorry,
of the
your time
zoning,
is up. Mark, is her time up? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
whatever, I got most of it out anyway.
Holly, thank you for that. We don't answer questions at these because we're not actually prepared to do that. We generally have to look some things up, as I think people have been on know. But we will take that question down and have it answered and put it up on the website, I believe.
Then what's the point
Mark?
of us asking questions? What's the point?
Uh,
If you don't answer
Mark,
questions, what is the
Mark.
point?
Mark, could you please shut her off? Thank you.
Nice.
The reason I ask people to be shut off and have 3 minutes is we have work to do this evening. And the reason that people ask questions or make comments is for us to understand them. We have made a lot of changes. That's the answer. I'm not going any further. Mark, what's the next question? The next.
Stupid.
Mike Moran.
Mike Moran, Midline Road, resident, heard more. My questions have been answered by Kim on a lot of the stuff. So I'll go over just some of the things. Most of mine are simple observations. Why was there a commission even started? And why is most of the commission work been hiding behind the Zoom instead of being in the public? And yes, I know COVID. The dollars spent, but we could have been spending it on lighting and other things in the town. A lot of the stuff in the zoning, if you get into it, the ones that irritate you is, it seems to be a lot of aesthetics questions. It's some neighbors complaining about how their other neighbors' places look or their use of it. Like they don't want the garage doors open because you might see junk. And Brooktondale Market, it's got an ugly tent out front.
Yes, it does.
Under zoning, that probably wouldn't be allowed. Why is the Brooktondale Baptist Church in the business area, commercial zone? Why is there no commercial zone in Sladeville, yet there is in Brooktondale and Speedsville? And we've got a Dandy and we've got the post office. Why does the Brooktondale hamlet go up Snyder Hill Road? Who lives there that is going to get whatever benefit that is? So those are the little things as you go through and read. Mine is people not liking the way other people's property looks. If it's a health or safety matter, go for it. But if it's just your view of what doesn't look good, I don't think that's the right things to do. Oh, wait, drive through the town of Caroline and see how many no zoning needed signs there are.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mark.
Jean, you're muted.
Yeah, was good.
Sorry. Mr. Moran, thank you for speaking this evening. And I again say that I think your question is about why was the commission put into order, which is really not a question for us. It's for the town board. I hope they will answer that for you. The next speaker is from my list is Cyrus. Cyrus, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Oh, okay, great. I just wanted to express my deep gratitude to the town board and to the zoning commission for the enormous amount of work and thought they're putting into this process, which is designed to really protect everyone and not infringe on anybody's rights. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I really hope that people will keep it board and the zoning commission are trying to do. It's really to help all of us to protect our town, which we all love to live in, protect its natural spaces. And nobody is going to tell you that you have to mow your lawn or anything like that. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Also, I don't understand this objection to having Zoom meetings. for a lot of us, especially people who are working very hard, it is very much more convenient to have a Zoom meeting than to have to drive somewhere for a meeting. So it's nice to have the option. It's hybrid meetings are probably best, but there's no reason to pick on the town board just because they're having Zoom meetings. It's really much more convenient. So please, I would ask everyone to keep an open mind, listen to what the town board and the zoning commission is trying to do, and don't fall for all this misinformation. Thank you.
Cyrus, would you identify yourself and give us your address, please?
Yeah, I'm Cyrus Umriger, and I live on Caroline Depot Road.
Thank you very much. Thank you for speaking this evening.
I've been in the
Mark.
area since 1980.
Thank you very much. Mark,
Yeah.
I think I will take at least one more question. Let's see how the time goes.
Okay, so next speaker, right?
Yes.
Okay, Hannah Wiley.
My mom is Linda Criswell. I don't know if she has her hand up on Zoom or not, but she sent a letter with me.
He does.
Okay, all right, I'll just read mine for now. She has my 5-month-old at home, so we'll just see how it goes. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Hannah Criswell Wiley. I was born and raised on Criswell Farms on Hartford Road. I'm 30 years old. I've been helping my dad, Russ Criswell, on the farm my whole life, as has my brother, and for quite some time, my little sister as well. This farm has been in the town, ran by our family since 1850. We own or rent just shy of 1,000 acres in the town, along with multiple houses, barns, and around 80 cows. The farm has always paid its taxes, no matter how high, for all of these years. Zoning would raise the taxes more, devalue our land, control how much property we can sell where, while stripping and controlling our rights as landowners. You keep saying zoning is going to help farmers preserve our land, but I don't understand what makes you think that we need or want your help, because no one ever asked us how we feel before the zoning commission was even a thing. If you think that we need that kind of help after proving ourselves worthy since 1850, I think you all need to reconsider your faith in our abilities to preserve our precious land ourselves. If you truly want to help us, stop finding ways to raise the taxes. I said it. We do not want or need zoning. There are already enough regulations that make it hard enough to do what we want with our land. It is our belief that the majority of landowners do not want zoning laws. You are our representatives and you work for us. It does not seem to any farmer in this town that I know of, and I know a lot, that you're doing a good job of representing us. We feel that you're working against us. You're 1 year working on a 139-page plan that's completely unnecessary, does not hold a candle to the 175 years my family's worked to preserve our land. And that's just one family, not including all the other families just like ours in this town who feel much like we do on this issue. It's because of us and families like ours that made Caroline what it is. So why can't you leave well enough alone?
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah. Hannah, I don't understand. I couldn't hear your last name well enough to understand how it's spelled. Could you spell it for me?
My maiden name was Criswell, Crispell, and my maiden or my married name is Wiley, Willie.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you for speaking this evening. And I used to work with your mom, small town.
I hope that you'll hear her out, please.
I think we have time for one more, and that is someone on the Zoom, and that's Ellen Harrison.
Unmute me. I'm unmuted, right? Do you hear
Yep.
me? Okay,
Yes.
good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Glad you have time. I'll be quick. As I think you all know, I favor zoning. And I think there are a number of reasons for implementing zoning in the town of Caroline. And tonight, I'd like to highlight one particular aspect, and that has to do with the use and enjoyment of my home. So I understand the wish of myself and many of my neighbors and the people who have been speaking to do as we please with our land. We pay the taxes, we own it, etc. And I recognize, however, that there are uses that I wouldn't want to have next door. So if I have the ability to do whatever I want on my land, so does my neighbor. And frankly, if a pig farm were to locate next door, or a gas station, or a racetrack, or a factory, I wouldn't want to live here. What I cherish about where I live and our community is part of its character. And I don't think I could live with that. And while you're hearing a lot from a vocal minority who believe that being able to do whatever they want is the most important thing, I would ask them, but I also would say, I believe the majority of residents of the town of Caroline would want zoning to provide the security about what could be built next door to them, what their home would be like if their next door neighbor chose to do something that they found made their home really unlivable, whether it's by odor or noise or pollution. So I just want to urge you to think that there's really a majority of people who I believe are in favor for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen Harrison. And thank you for your comments. I hear that you're in favor of zoning to provide some security as a homeowner. I really want to apologize to everyone else who would like to speak this evening. We hope to have, I'm sorry, Mark, are you speaking to me?
Ernie has something.
I just want to know how many more people have actually asked.
So we have,
Right
Four.
now I have, I've got 4 people's hands up again here. And how many more do you have, Mark?
4.
That would be 8 more people.
I would just suggest that maybe we can hear people out. I mean, it's, I have time. I don't.
I second the motion.
Good for you.
Ernie, I hear what you have to say. Is someone else from, I don't know who else was that who spoke. Was that someone from the board?
Yes.
Mark, can you tell me, was that someone from the board who was trying to speak?
No, I don't think so. Here.
In that case, your motion, Ernie, is fails for lack of a second.
Overruled.
Bruce is waving.
Wait a minute. Whoa.
Bruce is waving, and Bill has his hand up.
Okay, Bruce, I see your hand. Now I see your hand, Bruce.
You're muted, dude.
Can you unmute the members of the commission? And I think Bill's hand is up as well.
Sorry, Bruce, it's taking me a minute here. Oh,
Bruce is both Bruce and iPhone if you're looking for someone.
okay. Not being sluggish.
Maybe we can squeeze the speaker in all the way.
Mark, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay. Yep, no, I would second Ernie's motion. And I would just also say that I, as much as I like Ellen Harrison, every time we've had privilege of the floor, she has been on privilege of the floor. And I'm just thinking that possibly you should look at the list or make a list and take some people who haven't had privilege of the floor. But I agree with Ernie. We should listen to as many people as we can. It would be a great thing to do. Thank you.
okay, you have a second. I'm going to ask the commission members, Mark, can you, I'm just going to look at their faces if I can and try to
Sure.
count. Or put your thumb up. And, oh, Bill, I think you still have your hand up. Do you want to speak to this motion?
Yeah, I was going to speak to the motion and, I'm speaking to the folks that are there in the town hall, to those here on the Zoom call, and obviously directly to Ernie and Bruce. I am, believe it or not, though I'm going to speak against the motion, sympathetic to the, what's going on here and the desire to let everyone speak. But I don't know where it stops. I am happy, maybe want to set aside some other times, but I've been working for hours on this today and this week. And Ernie, maybe you have time, but honestly, I don't. We have a lot of material to get through. And this night, there'll be another half hour, 45 minutes of privilege of the floor if we take the 8 more people. And then at next meeting, there may be a lot. I want to hear from these people, but maybe they could send things in writing too. It's actually much easier for us to do a careful job of considering your comments if we have them in writing. So I understand the desire to speak. I've done it many times myself at a public meeting, but the zoning commission is a working body. And basically we're never going to be able to get any work done. So Jean has set aside a certain amount of time for privilege of the floor. We fit in what we can, and then we move on to our work. That's very unpopular. Because everyone says, oh, I hear from everybody. But honestly, we will start the meeting at 9 o'clock. So you are allowed to come in and talk to someone at the town hall. You are allowed to send a physical letter. You are allowed to send us an email, and we will respond to all of those questions. We have done that throughout this process. I will also point out, again, this will be very unpopular. A number of the questions asked tonight have been answered. Those answers are already on the website. So it would be helpful if that information was more widely disseminated. I don't know how to do that other than to put it on the website. So if you guys have ideas about how we can tell you that we've answered 5 times, how was the zoning commission started, tell me how to get the word out to you. But we have been trying to reach you with this information, and it's obviously not getting there. So no, I think that we need to move on and get some work done. That's the end of what I'll say.
3 minutes.
I'm going to take a vote. I'm going to take a vote. All those in favor of the motion to allow those 8 people that we've identified at this point, I'm not going to go any further than that, to speak this evening, please raise your hand. I see Will, I see Bruce, and I am assuming I see Ernie.
Ernie.
That's all I see. Is that correct? Those who are opposed to the motion, please raise your hand. I see Bill, I see Michelle.
This is Barb. I'm opposed.
Barb is opposed, and I am opposed. Okay, that is opposed. That motion fails. We're going to go on with the meeting right now. Thank you.
I think this is very dishonorable. I say that with respect.
Are you guys here for the town or for yourselves? Honestly. What's
I'm
the
gonna,
meeting?
please.
Why
Can we have
is
some
there
order in this
such a
meeting?
rush for this? Spend a few
May
minutes.
I
with
have
this.
some order in this meeting? Thank you.
No. Think of the people of the town, not yourselves.
No,
Mark, can you let me in the meeting? This is
not good,
Barb.
Mark. This is very bad.
Barb, Mark, would you please let Barbara in the meeting? Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. We have approval of the minutes, and then we'll have a town council report, and then I'm going to speak to what's happened here this evening. The approval of the minutes from the last meeting, I sent out a newer version tonight. Would someone please move those?
Hold it. Meeting.
I didn't know. I'm sorry, we don't have.
Bruce, are you
Minutes?
moving those minutes?
No, I would like this correction to the minutes.
They went forward to the zoning commission, so.
Okay, what's the correction?
The correction on the, when we voted
I
on
can't
the,
hear because people speaking in the room. Please be quiet in the room. Bruce, what do you have to say?
when we voted on the boundaries of the maps,
Yes,
you had me abstaining. I didn't abstain. I voted no. Because I don't know
I'm
how,
sorry. Thought what I had heard you say was I can't vote yes or I can't vote no. So I took that as an abstention, which is the same as I did for Will. I will be happy to correct that to a no.
okay, that'd be great, because I don't know how, or what it would be like, or how would we know how to finalize any boundaries without accepting or considering all of the zones. We didn't consider any more commercial zones at all. And I had talked.
We
about
were
that.
only doing, thank you, I will correct that. Is there anything else to, about the minutes themselves? Would someone like to move them?
You can only cut the trees within the footprint of the house, if you're building in the wood
But-
area.
This is Barb. I move the minutes with the correction noted by Bruce.
Thank you, Barb. Could someone second those?
To me.
I second it. And can you cut that background noise because we can't hear?
Yeah, I think those are people in the room. Not positive. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
So am I.
Okay. I
In-
see that as, thank you. Any opposed? Those are moved. Tim Murray,
Good evening, everybody. The next town board meeting will be on Wednesday, March the 7th at 7 PM. I believe that will be a hybrid meeting. And I just wanted to mention to you, picking up on a request from Will, that at the last minute, I apologize, I failed to report that we had a presentation to the town board the week before by Monica Roth, who used to work at Extension. And Monica had given a presentation, I believe it was in Danby, that one or two of our board members had been to regarding current agricultural farming practices and in the direction of future practices. The town board thought that was would be so helpful that we invited Monica to the town board to give a presentation. I apologize that I forgot to report on that last meeting, and my recollection is that invitation to Monica, which she accepted very quickly, happened between zoning commission meetings, but her presentation is available through the Zoom video on the town board website during the last business meeting. So thank you very much.
thank you,
Wow.
Tim. I am going to give my brief report, which is that I wanted to also mention that there are several other town council people on. I think I saw Catherine. And thank you very much for being here. I also wanted to say that several members of the town council have reached out to me to express to the members of the zoning commission their gratitude for the work that we are all doing. Kate Kelly McKenzie has done that. Cal has done that. Thank you so much, and I wanted to pass that along. Bill Padulka, is there anything from the Planning Commission?
I can report that we are making, this is a heads up to the town board that pretty much the battery setting law is done and a cover memo is in its final stages. And so you can expect something to come to you. And again, I think that's timely because basically it is relevant to some of the questions we have to answer in zoning. So anyway, it is just about done.
Congratulations and thank you. Work on the zoning law together. We have some things to do on Article 3. We really have done a lot of work on Article 2 last meeting, and I think that that's getting into very good shape where we could bring it, put up a draft 2 soon. So Article 3, Bill, do you want to present this evening? Do you want to go through the use tables? Would you like to start?
Did you say me or Michelle? No.
Hello.
Michelle, I know you put these together. Do you want to talk about these?
What I was gonna suggest.
Bruce is trying to get something in too, I think.
Okay, yeah, Bruce doesn't have enough time to talk. Go ahead.
Okay. Bruce?
I just wanted to say before we go completely past it, that just getting on and watching the presentation that I think it's Monica Roth gave to the town board. I think possibly we should do that as a commission, just because I believe being in the agriculture, that process, that she knows that a lot about, that we might learn something from that rather than say, try to go look at it or listen to it and nobody will, and everybody will be wondering what somebody's talking about. because I believe that that was a big,
And I
What's that?
think some other people have. I said, I already have watched it. I will ask people to do that, and if people don't do that or don't tell me they have, I will take up your suggestion. But thank you for, I'm glad you watched it, as did I. Oh, Tim, I did, before we go to this, let me just go back to Tim Murray for a minute. Tim, you had said that you were going to, have you had a chance to talk to Catherine Goldberg on the about the agricultural issue yet?
No, I know that I believe the Agriculture Committee met for the first time. Perhaps it was this past weekend or very, very recently. So no, I have not.
Okay. Let's go back. Michelle, then?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah, I was going to suggest actually that Bill show it, because then I could have my copy open so I could read the comments. I
All right.
read the notes.
All right,
So
let
that you-
me,
Okay.
let's see now.
You want to share your screen or anything? Or?
Yeah, I will. There's a slight temporary delay here while I figure out, did I save that latest version in a place I can get to it quickly? And
If not, I can try it. If I,
Okay.
last time I had problems sharing my screen, so whatever
yeah, I
you
understand.
think.
You start, I'm gonna have to go to the other room quickly, do something on my other computer, and within 5 minutes I can have it. Why don't you start? I'll be right back.
Let me see if I can get it. Okay.
What's that? He has to go get this other, they basically.
In that case, I just want to say a few things to the people online. We have been meeting since last April. We had a number of people from the town come to when our meetings were more open and more of us were attending in person. I have tried very hard to attend as many of these as I can in person. Tonight I can't go because I may have been exposed to COVID, and I'm not willing to share that with anyone. I hope I don't have it, but I'm not willing to share that with anyone right now. We are trying very hard to answer your questions. Someone on the chat online asked if they can put questions in. So please do that. Yes, please put questions in the chat. I can copy the chat afterwards and forward those questions. Michelle, do you have that?
I have it, but do you have to make me a co-host so I can share my screen?
Mark would have to do that. Mark, have you done that?
Have I done what?
Have Michelle be a co-host so she can share her screen.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, of course. Yeah, I got distracted by the chat issue.
Okay.
Okay, so we have.
Great.
All right.
Oh, wait, if Bill's ready, let him.
I will be ready in about 2 minutes. I just have to sync and then I can display, but let me just.
Okay, I'll let you do it, and then I can look at the notes I made as you're going through it.
So why don't we tell people what we're doing? Michelle, you want to describe what these uses are?
Well, we took, if you had looked at the draft zoning law that's, online, there's a table 3 that has uses allowed in certain districts or zones. And so we've, taking some of the feedback we've received in our own opinions, we've expanded these uses and changed the districts that are actually listed on the draft law. So I guess we've added uses, we've expanded uses and changed the districts. And so this chart is just showing our latest thinking, and it differs somewhat from what you would see on the town board's website.
Yeah, I'm ready to share screen, but not enabled to yet.
Okay.
Mark, would you please allow Bill?
Yes, Bill's the co-host.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I
Okay.
feel very powerful now. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fabulous. Okay. So, so I think what I understand is Bill is going to talk us through these, and Michelle is going to add some comments. And
Oh,
as you'll
really?
see- Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Okay, all right. Well, I think, all right. So Michelle probably said this was in the other room, but when she worked on it, first off, because of the split we made between Sladeville Springs and West Sladeville, there's a new column. And so all those items are in red. Elsewhere, red designates a change that Committee A was recommending. So Michelle probably said all that, so I just said it to you again. A few lines are new. Under residential uses, the first part of the table here, I think I don't know if we need to go through line by line, or if someone has a problem with a line, then they can bring up a question. Jean, that's really up to you, but I can display this amount of the table at one time.
I think that's good. And I will ask people Mark, if everyone on the commission is unmuted, I would just ask people to speak up because I can't see everyone. So if you have a question or a comment about one of these uses, P's means permitted. Bill, so explain
Right.
the other
Okay,
things.
so yes, the designations are P is permitted, which means that use is simply permitted. There's no review, et cetera, or anything else going on. ASPR stands for abbreviated site plan review, which is intended to be a one meeting brief review of something, as there are some uses that might require at least some amount of chit chat back and forth. For example, we talked about the water resources overlay. If the building it either is or is not in the wetland, and so someone just has to sign off on the fact that it's not in the wetland. So that would be an ASPR sort of action. Some things will say site plan review, SPR, and that's a more involved review. And as you'll see, there tend to be larger commercial uses. And then occasionally there is an SUP, which stands for special use permit. And to be clear, a use that has a special use permit, it's an allowed use in the town. That is, it's not going to be disallowed. You don't say, oh no, when you apply for the special use permit. It simply is that some of these uses, again, one simply wants to make sure, the goal is to make sure that use doesn't negatively impact neighboring uses. So it's thought to be an allowed use, but certain conditions might need to be placed on the use, amount, intensity, location. I'm not sure, that the set and Ann can inform us better, but that there might be certain conditions placed on the use to make sure that the rights of everyone are respected. So that's the SUP. So there's 4 different things: P, ASPR, SPR, and SUP. So there's 4 different entries in the table.
Okay.
We've had discussion about home occupations, minor and major, and that might be one of the big places to start, or this line on clustered residential subdivisions. Okay, so we'll go here.
That was a question. I think Ernie, maybe you want to address that question. That was set as a question on the draft, needing clarification from Nan. And so, I don't know, maybe Ernie could ask his question about it.
I mean, I think the question of cluster residential subdivision is a meeting in itself. Because I think that we need to discuss just the ramifications of that whole idea of forcing people to set aside a big chunk of their land if they want to develop it, versus using as an incentive to encourage people to set aside some of their land. So I think the purpose of this meeting is really to kind of get through most of these things that we've got a good handle on, and let's leave the bigger nuts for later. Just my suggestion.
Okay, so that one would be left for later.
Thank you. You have a note also, a number 2 under the major and minor. So you want to talk about those a little?
Well, that I think Bill was just going to say that we were suggesting in the terminology, major and minor occupations are separated. They have different, how many people you can allow. And we're suggesting that you just combine them, that there is no difference between a major and a minor occupation.
And I will point out that was not necessarily a unanimous opinion of the Committee A.
Right. Oh, yeah. I just want to say the way I did this is if I saw a comment on the side and somebody said, I agree, I just made that change. In other words, I didn't take a poll of everybody. Not everybody commented on everything. So these changes are just based on basically at least 2 people are suggesting it.
Okay. Anybody on the committee want to talk about major, minor occupations and what those mean to you? I'm going to ask.
I
Go
think
ahead.
Will wants to, yeah.
Will?
So we don't need to discuss it now, but what's not clear or explained anywhere is some of the assumptions behind it. Michelle and I talked about it briefly. The question is, and I'll take a shot at asking the question, but it's not going to be obvious maybe what I'm trying to get at. When you have a home occupation, at what point does it matter what the use is that is part of your home occupation? So it's possible that some people will read this and they'll think, oh, home occupation, that's what I'm doing, so whatever I do is okay. And other people will say, well, the use I'm doing is fill in the blank. And as long as I'm doing that use and it's allowed in my district, I can do it as a home occupation. And then we get into, well, we don't have all the possibilities in the use table or in the document. So I think there's those issues really could make a difference for the people who are trying to follow the rules, and also for the people who are trying to interpret the rules, you know, future volunteers after there's nobody from the original discussion taking part.
Okay. I'm going to put the two things that we mentioned, the home occupations and the clustered in a parking lot. And we'll come back. I'm going to ask Nan about those in a bit. And then Ernie, what do you have to say?
This Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Ernie. Bruce?
Maybe it was Ernie. Was it you?
No, it wasn't me.
Okay, I was just gonna say, my problem was this, when we were going over on this committee, was what measure were we gonna use to discriminate between a minor and a major occupation? What's gonna differentiate the difference?
And I think Michelle's suggestion was that you could combine them. Michelle?
Combine them. Well, in the terminology, it appears that like if you have up to 3 people working with you, that's considered a major home occupation. It's from what I can gather from the terminology, it's the number of people that are working with you.
Right.
So I'm suggesting it doesn't matter how many people are working with you if it's a home occupation, or you just say it's up to 3 people. But I don't see why you need to differentiate between the two. And maybe, I think we did talk to Nan about that a little bit, and I think she said it didn't really matter, but she could talk about that again. I mean, I think as long as you've got the parking for it at your house and you've got the, you know, enough bathrooms for people, it's just really up to you how many people are working with you at your house.
Okay, I'm gonna, as I said, put those things in a parking lot. I want to get through the rest of the residential uses and then we'll come back and discuss these. So, Bill, do you want to kind of hoist that thing up?
Yeah, I will. And I would say, I'm occasionally getting notes on my Zoom saying so-and-so is in the waiting room. So is Mark continuing to monitor that and let people in?
Oh, I could probably do it too. I didn't even think, I'm a
Yeah,
co-host.
I could also hit the admit here, but I don't know if I have the, power to do that. All right, so let's pull this down. Okay, so actually, let me see. Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay.
So that's the end of this page. We do definitely need to talk about the solar and battery stuff here. Well, don't have to. I mean, briefly noted that it's permitted everywhere because these are small systems. These appear twice in the table, and one question for Nan is that okay? Because that was true before, so a couple of things appeared twice. But because they're residential in nature, they appear in the residential section, but they also appear later because they are potentially commercial in nature as well. So the same item appears twice in the table, but the same thing is if it's small for a battery energy system is under 600 kilowatt hours, and small for solar energy facility is under 20 kilowatts. That they would be allowed, in all districts with a simple permit. There's basically a little form you fill out for the code officer.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about that? Just speak if you do. And then we have one more in the residential, which is the wind towers, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and so there was a question on this. So, for example, I went through briefly late this afternoon, way too late to really be useful, all the questions that have come in, trying to flag ones that were relevant to the use table. And I do remember there was one about the wind towers and why they require a special use permit. There was an answer to that on the website, but I think it's just a question that we could discuss or think about, because indeed it has been changed to a P here, that a personal use wind tower would not require a special use permit. And since probably the special use permit was generated by Nan in the first place, that might be a good place for her to help educate us on her thinking. And then we can decide whether it should be SUP or P.
Good. Well, then I think we've kind of looked at all the residential uses that we were looking at.
I
Oh,
had a
Bill?
comment.
Sure.
So I think I put my comment about this into the Google Doc after Michelle went through, so she didn't pick up on it. But the multifamily dwellings, you know, in the subdivision law, you can have 3 residences on a property before it goes into a separate set of requirements. And that law was from 2018. So it's fairly recent. And then now all of a sudden we're just covering 1 and 2 family dwellings. But I thought Barb, that you also commented on that it should be 3. 1, 2, or
Barb?
3.
Yeah, yes, there is language in the subdivision law along those lines.
Mhm.
And I would make the point that in a building code, I'm sorry. In the building code, 1 and 2 family dwellings are treated along with townhouses, which are basically 3 family dwellings. And so in the building code, they're lumped as one part of the code. That's the residential building code. And so there's some other reasons to consider 3 units as similar to a single or 2-family home.
Yeah, Jean, for the parking lot, I would suggest that this is kind of a bigger issue, and that is to, at some point, I think the zoning commission needs to take a careful look at the subdivision law and match up what's in the zoning law with what's in the proposed zoning law with what's in the subdivision law, and either modify the proposed zoning law to correspond with the existing subdivision law, or suggest changes to the town board that might be considered for the subdivision law based on our deliberations and public input. So I think that it's not just this one item that Will is mentioning now, which is an important item, but I think there are other areas throughout the proposed law that we need to get the subdivision law and the zoning law in sync with one another.
Great. I agree. And let's figure out how to do that. So if those are the comments on this residential part, I'm going to ask Nan a couple of questions and see if she has anything she wants to say about this so far. Nan?
Yeah, well, thank you. I jotted down the questions and I'll just go through that. So the first question was on the conservation subdivision and cluster, and whether it should be mandatory or voluntary with incentives. And if that's certainly a policy decision the town can make. I can tell you from the reality of how things actually work, is that lots and lots of places have asked for a conservation subdivision to be done on a voluntary basis, and they try and incentivize it with what's called a density bonus. So someone in return for preserving X% of the parcel as open space in the development, they get extra density for that. So that's perfectly fine. If that's what you want to do, is to make it voluntary with incentives, that's fine. I can tell you though that it rarely works. And so if the goal, because if the conservation subdivision has more, in order to do it, you have some additional analysis. And to be frankly, it's a lot easier for people to just take the parcel and split it up into X number of lots, and as per however many lots they're eligible to get. And that's what they typically do. The subdivisions are mostly laid out by a surveyor. So I think if you want to make it voluntary with incentives, that's great, but not to really expect an awful lot out of it. So the reason that I recommended that it be mandatory for major subdivisions is because for communities that really want to see open space, meaningful open space preserved when a major subdivision takes place, it really has to be part of a requirement, just because the voluntary, my experience over 25 years across New York State is very rare indeed that a voluntary conservation subdivision would take place.
I want to interject one question quickly, because I probably knew this at one time and have since forgotten, but what is the distinction between a clustered residential subdivision versus a conservation subdivision?
So they're really one and the same. I mean, traditionally the word cluster was kind of what was incorporated in zoning since about maybe 1990 or somewhere between 90 and 95. In the planning world, it's kind of migrated over to be called a conservation subdivision, and it uses that 4-step process that's outlined to preserve open space. So it gives you more flexibility. So a clustered subdivision is exactly that. It puts all of the houses in one location clustered together. The conservation subdivision, which I would rather not use the word cluster, the conservation subdivision strategically locates the house sites in whatever way is best for that parcel. They may be clustered, or they may be far apart and just strategically located to preserve either the open space or to ensure that each house lot has visual or physical access to the preserved open space. So I think that kind of part of the conservation subdivision kind of inherent is, if someone wants to do that as a cluster and that's what works, fine. If it doesn't work, or it's not desired to be clustered, then so be it. I think what the point that Ernie brought up though, about whether the conservation subdivision technique should be mandatory or voluntary, that's a policy decision for the town to make. It really depends on, how you want to go with that. I just think that, again, the reason I made it mandatory for majors is because that's really the only way it happens.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about that, this is Michelle. Are these just for major subdivisions?
Yes, these are just for major subdivisions.
Okay.
So that would be 5 or more than 5. I think it's more than 5.
Okay. And just as a quick example, and I don't know if anyone in the audience, that was there to speak earlier at the town hall is still there, or those on Zoom, but for example, the section that was read out about connecting by Holly McGee about, connecting this and that and the other with pathways, et cetera, is for major subdivisions. It was not something that would apply to building a single lot. And that's an example of it's difficult, there's a lot here, I fully get it, but there's a lot of misunderstandings in the community that I think are generating a lot of the anger. And I don't know how to best explain all this, but this is an example of that, where, there's be a handful of major subdivisions probably in Caroline that this would apply to. It's not like it's going to hit everybody.
Right.
So Nan, anyone else? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, the next question was on the difference between a minor and a major subdivision.
Yep.
And does it matter? The reason that I have split that up, again, comes from experience of that. I think the reality is that not all home occupations are created equal. So for instance, someone who's sitting in a home office, sitting at their computer doing whatever, is very different, or I think most communities see that as very different than someone who has a sawmill. I'm just pulling something out of a hat, you know, and they have lots of trucks coming in and lots of noise and lots of things stored outside. They're both home occupations, but in terms of how they function differently. So the thought was, really, who cares about the minor home occupation? Someone sitting in their house or their barn or their garage doing whatever. Like, that's usually no community I work with really cares about those. But there are issues with the more intensive home occupations. They're still a home occupation, but they have lots of activity. There may be noise, there may be trucks, there may be cars coming and going, there might be, you know, signs and lights, and it's acting, even though it's a home occupation, it's much more intensive. So a lot of communities split out minor and major to make sure that the more intense kind of home occupations get that little extra review through the abbreviated site plan review, just to make sure it's not infringing on you know, other neighbors or other issues. And the question about at what point does so is what Will brought up is a good point that should be clarified, is that does a home occupation allow you to only have a home occupation if it's on this list somewhere as a regular business, or does anything go as a home occupation? And that is again a policy decision for the town to make. It can go either way. I would say in most of the rural communities I work with, they're like, if it's a home occupation, they control it by whether it's a minor or a major, and that if there's some use that someone wants to do and it's not on this list and it's a home occupation, it can still go. Other communities say the only kind of home occupation you can have is if it is also on this list somewhere. So I think you have a decision to make about that point. I think I had intended it when I drafted this. I had intended a home occupation to be pretty much, you know, controlled by minor and major, not by the use. So if someone is doing, I don't know, someone is doing what, you know, whatever, and it doesn't happen to be a use allowed as a regular business, it's still okay. That was my interpretation of what I heard you all talking about, but that is certainly a point you can decide, and whatever way you go, we should clarify that. So, because that is a common question that comes up.
Yeah,
Okay.
just looking at the definitions again, and according to the terminology, the difference mainly seems to be how many people are employed, not what kind of occupation it
Right,
is.
that's right. That's exactly, it was really based on intensity of use and not on the actual use. So it's
Yeah,
how
I mean,
many.
I think the assumption here, and we can debate whether it's valid or not, is that, you know, minor home occupations, though some of them might have intense impacts, are less likely to than a major home occupation. And because the simplest number of employees. And so I agree, it's probably not an absolute rule that only major home occupations could be a problem. And so maybe we could lump, but I think that either you don't review anything, or you force all of them to go through review, which I'm not in favor of. And so I think one argument to be made is, okay, let's keep the division and say, okay, that would be the one way to maybe catch that small handful of major home occupations that potentially would be problematic for the neighbors. I don't really know. That's, I see the logic, I guess, to why it was divided out that way. Let me put it that way.
Well, I could see going that way also, as also because the ASPR doesn't seem that onerous to me to go through, you know, it's not like a major
Yeah,
permit.
this is, right, this is this is one meeting.
Yeah, so I could see leaving it the way it is, but that's also, again,
Yeah, I
my
mean, you know,
opinion.
it's certainly a policy decision. I totally get why you would want to just lump them all together, and maybe that's how you want to go, and that's fine. You know, again, it's only my experience of working with lots of communities where some home occupations can be pretty intensive and have caused problems. So this is one way to you know, to address that, but you know, there's certainly there's nothing to prevent you from just saying home occupation and let them go. That's something you'll have to decide.
And Jean, I don't know how much discussion you want, Jean, of this. I will just say I voice support for the notion that the use doesn't have to be on the list somewhere. I think indeed that Nan read the sense of the committee right, that, you know, if it really is a home occupation, that you're basically living in your house, you got this other thing you're doing on the side, that is totally fine anywhere in the town.
I think I'm hearing that too, and so I'm going to try to put this in words. Let us keep the home occupations minor separate from the home occupations major, understanding that the discerning difference is having 3 employees or more, and that the home occupations minor would be permitted, and that the home occupations major all the way across this chart would be abbreviated site plan review. Could people just, I can't see people, so can you just say yay or nay?
One comment only, that it's possible that in the commercial zone, ASPR wouldn't be needed for a major home occupation. Just a thought I'm throwing out.
Well, we're in the residential uses right now.
Yes, but there's still a commercial
There
category
is
here.
commercial. Right, okay, so you're saying that you might not need the ASPR in the commercial
Yeah,
zone?
and I may be wrong, because for example, there could be a cluster of houses in the commercial zone, and so it would still be appropriate to do this. So I just
guess
toss it out there.
Okay, what do other people think about that?
I think that's unnecessarily complicated. I would just keep it the same all
At
the way across.
ASPR, okay?
Yeah,
I'm cool.
Okay, so let us assume that. So with that, and I'm taking, I think at this point, I think we all have to think about the clustered residential a bit. So removing the clustered, which only has question marks across anyway, and let's go back down to wind towers.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say the reason I put that as a special use permit also comes from experience where these things have been actually proposed and built. And the reason I gave it a special use permit is because they are noisy and they can have caused a lot of neighbors to be concerned about, you know, having them put up and having them either shadow something in their yard or cause flicker in the neighboring yard because of the spinning of the blades and aesthetic. So they can be problematic. You know, and they're also, if you're not going to have that kind of, if they're going to be permitted, I strongly recommend that we at least put in a setback. If you don't put in a setback and they fall down, you know, they can fall onto the neighbor's property, and that can be very problematic. So again, it's, you know, it's totally up to you. This is one that, you know, the technology is always changing, and maybe in a few years we'll have great wind towers that are shorter and more efficient and quieter, but right now they can cause problems.
well, I just want to say that number 3 note stipulates that Ernie had put in some dimensions, that they're at least, they're less than 80 feet tall and they're at least 100 feet away from property lines or something. I forget the exact thing.
Right.
But so that's only permitted if they meet those criteria of being that far from a property line and under a certain height.
And I guess what I would want to ask Nan is what we, you know, either we have or don't have the thing that Michelle just read out, but what would be some of the sort of things that a special use permit might do if the neighbors are concerned about flicker or noise?
It's really, it gives the ability for citing, you know, with, if it's just a permitted use and they meet the setbacks, it could go anywhere.
Right, so,
within
so,
that.
so the petition, the remedy might be, okay, you've got to put it down around here where the neighbors aren't going to see it, that sort of thing.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that wind towers really deserve the kind of attention that the solar and battery got. You know, I think that I agree with Ernie's way of looking at it, and what the committee has here for a listing for personal use. But I don't think that I don't think you want to just take anything larger than what we might say in the zoning law and just say, well, that requires an SPR. I don't think it's going to cover it. Just like we wouldn't have said that large solar would have been fine if it just went through the SPR process and was zoned. It really, maybe we want to make a specific note or recommendation to the town board that if a large windmill is a allowed use in the town, we really need a siting law. It's pretty complicated.
I agree, Will, this, and I think this is the personal one. So we need to think about that.
Gene?
And I'll quickly chip in that, you know,
Gene?
Bruce, go ahead, and then I've got a quick thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
Bill?
having a real problem with my computer too. I can't get on different things, so I was gonna I agreed with the minor and the major comments that were stated and Michelle said, but I had a question before about the conservation subdivision. I know we have talked about it, but I didn't understand anywhere in any of our discussions that the zoning commission had come to a consensus that we were going to use a conservation subdivision.
Yeah, I don't think we have. So from my suggestion for this evening is we ignore that row in this, and we have to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All I was going to say about wind is that, you know, the planning board took these technologies up, solar, battery, and wind, in a deliberate order because of the likelihood of implementation in the town and the limited bandwidth and manpower we had. So Will's comments are spot on. I think that the planning board can and should and will develop a wind siting law, but realistically, in the town of Caroline, a large wind farm is unlikely. There are some hilltop areas that might be suitable for some of this medium scale wind. So it's an important question in general, but as a practical matter, wind towers for personal use are probably more likely to actually be installed. And so I'm glad they're in this law. So totally in agreement with Will that we should deal with it. But I'm not sure the zoning needs to at this time because it's not, from my understanding, imminent in the town.
I would just point out that I think there's only one windmill in the entire town of Caroline.
Mm-hmm. And actually in the entire county, there's not a lot because all the work that's been done by the county planning is not suitable at all. So let's go back.
Wait a minute, but you would take the other entry out of the use table, right?
What other entry are you talking about?
For the large windmill.
Is there one? I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. I assume it would be windmill. Okay, wind towers. Yeah. So right. So right now they aren't allowed anywhere except in the ag rural district. So I mean, yes, valid question. What to do with that?
I can wait till we get there. We can just take care of it now. I don't
That's
think
a good
you
question.
want to I don't think you want to, I think you want to rely on a well thought out law. There's some big questions there. Size matters. It's
Okay.
huge
So
differences.
a question probably for Nan about whether this would be allowed, because I don't know about, eventually there's a size over which the state supersedes local authority anyway. So if we go above 25 megawatts, I think the town can't say anything anyway, but would it be legal to put X's across the board? Would that hold up in a challenge? And I think that the point for the committee would be, and we're only doing it as a placeholder to protect the town until the planning board, hopefully in the next year or so, say, develops a wind siting law. Is that what you're suggesting, Will?
Yeah, because, you know, even a medium, like, we're not really fleshing it out. We're just saying, hey, if we go with Ernie's suggestion, hey, if it's got 100-foot setback and it's not any taller than 80 feet, then you're okay as long as you meet all the other rules. And that's pretty small. That's
So-
not even medium.
The way the use table is written is that anything that is not on that table is considered prohibited. So if you leave out wind towers, then they would not be permitted, except for the ones that are governed and regulated by the state, which is actually 20 megawatts, not 25 megawatts.
I thought 20 to
No.
25, the applicant had the choice to be local versus state, but I,
That's right. That's right,
Under the
Bill.
old, yeah, but at some point, the state takes over and the town has nothing to say about them. But below
Yeah.
that level, you can regulate, you can prohibit them if you want to. So if you know, you could allow them with regulations, or you could, if you remove the line, I mean, you could put X's across just to make sure it's clear, but if you removed it from the table, that would be deemed prohibited just because it's not on the table.
But it would never be regulated because who's gonna get a permit? I mean,
It would only the ones that would be allowed then would be the ones that are regulated by New York State, which are the biggest ones. So, and the town doesn't have anything to say about those anyway, really. The bottom line is there's very little for the town to say about any solar or wind, any large solar or wind project.
but I guess my question is how does it get regulated? I mean, if somebody
It
puts up,
wouldn't be regulated, it would be prohibited. The smaller ones would be prohibited then.
my understanding, Ernie, it's good. I think, so the smallest ones, as you suggested, if it's under 80 feet tall and we can put the condition, would be allowed.
Yes.
But anything between that and the largest ones where the state takes over would simply not be regulated at all because they wouldn't possibly exist in the town. They wouldn't be allowed to be built.
yeah, I don't know enough about wind technology to know whether that X's out a huge part of the market, but you know, I'm generally in favor of alternative sources of energy, and you know, a little complaining about noise isn't going to cut much mustard. I guess I've just, you know, kind of, you know, somebody puts up a wind tower in their yard, you know, they don't need to, you don't have to get a building permit for that, I don't think. You
Yeah,
know,
yes, you would need a building permit for that.
Okay.
I believe so.
May I make a suggestion, which was, I suggest that at this point, we leave the commercial, the agri-rural district as the site plan review with a note that says that we recommend that the planning commission take this up and that this be a matter for the planning commission to make a suggestion to the town board.
Okay, just to clarify, Jean, commercial currently has an X
Oh,
for the
I
larger
don't mean
systems.
commercial. I mean ag-rural, sorry. I wasn't
And,
speaking.
okay, and then it is a special use permit, not a site plan review.
Okay, special use permit. Yep.
I want to make sure I didn't know if you're trying to change the category. You know, that's all I'm
No,
trying
I
to make
was
sure. It's
just
clear.
not speaking well. Yeah, that's, I'm trying to say, let's leave it this way with a note that says, we recommend that the planning board take this up and then make a recommendation about this.
Okay, and
And-
again, I think, Al can speak in further. I think that, again, from what I understand of the market, it's not imminent to the town, and so there's little risk in doing that. But again, if the commission would rather be more conservative and put an X here, I'm also not opposed.
Okay, and this is in the commercial, I don't even know where we are right now. We're in
Well,
the,
this is the large wind towers which fall under
Yeah.
basically
let's-
other
let's-
uses.
let's all think about that and then come back and make that decision when we get to the commercial. And
Okay, I'm
let's
sure I'm
meanwhile
dizzying
go-
all of you. I'm going back up to,
Right.
But let me, can I just say something while he's
Yep.
doing that? Gene, when you say commercial, I find the use of the term commercial confusing because it seems to cover a lot of things. What we're looking at right now are all the possible uses that
Right.
some of them are commercial and some of them aren't. Or I think they're all commercial. It's just like where they're permitted.
Exactly.
We're
But
not
we're
gonna
looking right now,
Yeah,
I didn't want to make a decisions about the commercial uses and customary commercial accessory uses until we actually make some decisions about the residential uses.
oh, I see.
that we're
Oh, I
discussing
see
tonight.
like that
Yeah.
section. Okay.
yeah, I think we're confused between commercial uses and commercial district.
Right,
So-
right, that's what I meant. So let's go back and look at the, can you go up one more sheet, Bill?
Well, this is where we were. We left off with
Okay,
the residential
but-
stuff. I thought we got through all this. Am I
Well,
right?
there was just one other, someone
Oh.
else had a question about the difference between allowing for 3
All right.
individual single-family homes on a lot versus a multifamily dwelling. And Ernie brought up the point that one building that has 3 units in it is considered a multifamily dwelling. So you could have one building on a lot with 3 units in it would be a multifamily use versus one lot that has 3 houses on it is not a multifamily unit. I mean, so we're talking about multifamily buildings. So
Okay.
the fact that the subdivision allows for 3 houses on a lot is different than a multifamily building that has 3 or more units in a building.
so, and right now, when you say single family dwellings, that really only means one family, right?
Yes.
So, and what I hear, and perhaps what I'm hearing people say is you could make single family dwellings, 2 family dwellings, or 3 family in one building. And you could make them all permitted.
Well, once you get to 3, that is by definition of the building code, a multifamily dwelling. So
Ah,
there's
okay.
1 family dwellings, there's 2 family dwellings, and then there's multifamily dwellings.
No, there's a townhouses.
And townhouse, and a townhouse, which is, right, is like. an attached-
Okay, so it's for the uninitiated, Ernie or Nan, what's a townhouse?
Townhouse is a 3-unit building with fire separations between each unit. It's a configuration that's regulated by the residential building code as opposed to the commercial code, which regulates multiple family houses. Or multiple family dwellings, excuse me.
Right.
So,
Okay. So should we insert another line here for multifamily dwellings?
you should just say 2 family dwellings and townhouses.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I would have proposed.
Okay, so change the 2 family dwellings to 2 family dwellings and townhouses then. Does that make
Thank
sense
you.
to everyone? Okay, good.
And then townhouses needs to go in the definitions.
Okay, we will do that. Okay, so 2 family dwellings and townhouses would be permitted all the way across. Add townhouses. I'm putting that in my note. Okay, and with that, and taking out of the residential uses, the line that talks about clustered family residential, leaving that with question marks at the moment. And leaving home occupations minor and home occupations major as 2 separate lines. And we will work, I think, on making sure that we all know for sure what that is, but right, what I'm hearing now is a home occupation major has 3 employees or more, and I think our concerns are about noise and about parking and about deliveries and in and out. And that would only call for the abbreviated site plan review. With all of that, are we happy with the residential the way it is? And would you all accept that as going forward, this is where we are for draft 2?
What was the decision on the personal wind tower?
The personal wind tower was to, I think, was to, with Ernie's suggestion that it be, that, which is what I think that note refers to, that
Yeah.
it be 100 feet away from things and less than 80 feet tall, that would require a special, it would be permitted, or do you want to go with this, an AS, an abbreviated site plan review? What do people think?
I think the choice between, well, we could do ASP, the choice I think right now is between special use permit versus permitted. And I think we didn't decide.
I think
so
we
guess-
didn't decide, so what do people think?
I would go with permitted because the size can be, it doesn't have to be 80 feet. You can have something 30 feet up. And it's not really a big deal, and it will, generate enough electricity to take care of your air conditioner.
Okay, but it would say up to 80 feet at this point, is what we're saying. So.
Yeah, but
Permit that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure what Ernie's 80 feet is. I figured he meant tree line or something like that. and
I
that's
just
what-
threw out a number. I mean, it could very easily just be, these units are allowed up to 100 feet, but they have to be at least the height of the windmill and 20 feet away from the property line. So a 30-foot unit would have to be 50 feet from the property line.
Right, so it wouldn't fall down
Okay.
and hit somebody else.
Then you go to, any taller than that, you go to site plan review, abbreviated site plan review.
Okay,
So Ernie, I'm hearing that there were no criteria you used in terms of throwing those numbers out then. Those are just random numbers?
I don't remember whether I was responding to some other piece of information or not, but I really, I do not claim any knowledge of this subject.
Okay, so then I'll offer on wind towers for personal use that I think we should specify a maximum height, and we should specify a minimum distance from the property line. But I don't know what those numbers are until we do a little bit more informed research on it.
Okay, then my suggestion at this point is to remove that line from our agreement at this point and try to see if we can agree to the rest, and we'll come back to this.
Okay, and I guess along lines with Barb, I would suggest, yes, we look into it. I think wind laws often talk about what's called a fall zone, which is like roughly the height of the tower. And we could define such a thing. And I agree with the basic flexibility idea that you could simply say that, the fall zone has to fall within the property. And that way, if they have a short tower, you have more flexibility in where you place it. But we need to know what a reasonable max height of a personal wind tower is before we say anything. I agree with Barb wholeheartedly there. But to be honest,
let me just interject that the standard setback for wind towers is 1.5 times the height of the tower.
Yeah, and so we need to find out what the reasonable setback is. I agree also.
Okay. So
And
we'll
I will final comment is going forward to the final, like a draft of the public. I also want to emphasize, everybody, I'm not set in stone on any of this stuff. I might come back and say we P now, but we need an SUP later or something. I am not considering this a final draft because I really want to hear. People might say, hey, we hate this idea of no permitting for those things. You ought to have some review. We need to hear.
Okay, yep.
I agree.
We need to come up with a second draft that people can look at and feel that we are moving forward.
All I'm saying is don't have a crisis of confidence just because you're allowed to change your mind down the road. At least I am going to.
Jean?
Bruce, I think that's you. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Barb on that. We should definitely do that. And fall zone it is a law that it has to be, and I believe Nan was correct, is that it has to be 1.5 times the height of whatever it is away from the border. Be it cell tower, be it wind tower, be it anything that goes up in the air. So,
In that case, my
okay.
fall zone is really, really short. Okay.
Okay.
So are we gonna
Go
take
ahead.
that, are we gonna take that line out then until we can decide? or
We
what?
are gonna, yeah, we're gonna just, like hash mark it or something. What we're talking about now is the residential zone with the wind towers. We're not making that decision right now, and with the clustered housing development. But the
Okay.
rest of it, is everyone happy with that?
I'm
The rest
fine.
of that in the residential thing, say yes.
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 Any no's? Okay, let's
Whoa.
do agriculture.
Qualified, yes. Qualified, yes.
Love it.
Oh, come on.
Go the hell, come on, Will, go yes, say yes.
You guys are killing me. As long as I know, I can come back and tell you why that's a qualified yes. When
have.
we've talked about other things, then it's a yes.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, great. Okay, I am putting that down on my notes.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
and agricultural uses, let's just look at these. I would be so thrilled if we got through these. So
Well,
let's explain.
okay. Well, I talked to Will and I had a brief conversation. And maybe, Will, you want to talk about the CAFO, that maybe they should not be allowed in commercial.
Well, I didn't get the distinction. Like if you're, sorry, I have to squint to see what's actually on the page. You have a CAFO through an abbreviated site plan review and for rural and ag and rural. And usually you want those things to have really good setbacks, and then you have it as an ASPR for commercial, and I'm left going, are these the same people who are concerned about how things smell, and are they putting all the commercial stuff zones into hamlets? Then why would you even allow a CAFO in a commercial district, at least?
Can I address that? Because
Sure.
the reason is because you, because of the Ag and Markets Law 25AA, that if there's a New York State certified agricultural district and you happen to have it in a commercial zone, but it's still a farm in a New York State ag district, you cannot prohibit a CAFO. You cannot prohibit a CAFO anywhere in a New York State agricultural district. So I was thinking that however you treat CAFOs in the ag rural district, you would also, if you happen to have a farm in that, because the way we originally had the commercial district, if you recall, there were some farm lands in there. So I was thinking that you wouldn't be able to prohibit a CAFO if it, just because the New York State Ag District takes precedence over that. And you can't really regulate CAFOs. They're highly regulated at the state level, but the state does recognize that there are some things that the town would want to look at, such as where, where a manure pit, for instance, is placed in relationship to a wetland or a stream. So there are some minor things that the town can look at. But that's the reason why I added it in the commercial district, was thinking that there may be farmland that is still farmed in the commercial district that may have a CAFO on it. And if as long as it's a New York State agricultural district, you won't be able to really stop that.
Okay,
Okay.
so all that means is as we work through this, we need to come back and make sure that it makes what's on that line makes sense. Or if you want to decide to allow commercial districts in ag and rural, I'm ready for that. But I don't think that's what you're saying at all.
No, what I'm saying is.
I know what
that-
you're saying. I'm making a stupid joke.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
I guess is the question that I have then is ASPR the correct designation there? Or should there be an asterisk or something about this that goes to a note?
It depends on whether whether you decide that you want to have any review of CAFOs at all. If you just, you could just make it permitted, and then DEC would handle all of the all of the requirements of a CAFO, and you wouldn't have anything to say about it then.
Okay, so and ASPR is then if you have anything to say about it, that's the correct designation.
Yes, because the whole purpose of the New York State Agricultural District is to prevent overregulation of farms. So
Okay.
yeah, the state would look very unfavorably on any zoning regulation that would require a site plan review or a special use permit for a farm operation in a New York State ag district.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Gina, I will say, I think that makes sense that there could be a footnote to the table pointing out that the state basically regulates CAFOs, because someone might look at this table and say, why isn't the town doing more on CAFOs? So if we want to get that out there, we could have a footnote acknowledging that fact. And to Will's point, it would make sense to circle back and look at that commercial district and see if there are any actual farms in it. But, that doesn't preclude that a farm couldn't get generated there in the future. So, given that there's a fair amount of territory, maybe it makes sense just to leave it as is and not bother to circle back. But
Great. I will try to do that. Will?
If CAFOs end up, I'm not sure where they belong just because of the way ag and markets would respond, but my understanding is you do have the option of specifying setbacks, and really that's critical to how the CAFOs affect neighboring properties. And
Yeah,
I
I
don't
believe
think,
you can set setbacks, but they would have to be reasonable. I mean, you can't say 500 feet or, 1,000 feet or something like that.
yeah, but it still makes a huge difference. Yes.
Will, you arguing that we should have ASPR in all zones? I'm not following. You're saying you're right, that the town does have the ability to set some setbacks, reasonable, as Nana's pointed out. So what does that mean to this line?
Well, we are a right to farm community. Anywhere where we could have a CAFO, I think even the farmer won't mind if there's a healthy setback. What I've been told, and I have not traveled through those areas, but what I've been told is that in areas where CAFOs are accepted by local people, it's usually because they were able to have large setbacks. It makes a difference for all the things that people normally might object to. Setbacks help.
Okay, well, I move we table them the way it is. That seems reasonable to me.
Okay. Is there?
I'm under the impression that setbacks would be a real big thing when it comes to CAFOs. Just because if we can have setbacks, as far as smoke and noise and everything else, a CAFO is I believe, I'm not even sure what the number is of animals that can be present, but they are very large and therefore would create a lot of noise, a lot of smell, so I can't see where you couldn't regulate a larger setback. Just makes sense to me, but that's just me.
Right. But that seems to be relevant even to
I hear what you're all saying, but I'm also hearing what Nan is saying, that the state does not want us to do that.
No, that's, she
Well,
said if
setbacks-
it's too large. There's,
Right.
I'm sorry, I should let you answer. There's a difference between setbacks and too large.
Go
Right?
ahead, Nan.
No, I was gonna say, I think that if they're reasonable setbacks and there's a rationale for a setback, that would be acceptable. What you can't do is, prohibit them, and you can't put other requirements on them to say, oh, we're gonna limit you to, a certain size or a certain number of acres or a certain number of animals. That you can't. do.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the purposes of tonight, though, the setback distance would either appear in the dimensions table or in
Right.
the regulations further on in the document, and so is irrelevant to what's in front of us, as I understand it. I think it's an excellent point, put a pin in it and say, we're gonna determine some setback that the ASPR is then gonna take a look at.
Okay, hearing that, I think that's good. What else do we want to talk about in this table? The sawmill has an asterisk and a 5 next to it.
That, I think that asterisk is a mistake, but it was basically, according to my note, whether or not on farm is a typo, whether those words are supposed to be in there. I think Ernie made that comment, because then there's like other versions of sawmills. So we were just curious as to why there are all these different types of sawmills.
Yeah, that also goes back to the New York State Ag and Markets Law, was that because timber operations on a farm is part of a farm operation as per the New York State law. So someone who's up in their woods harvesting trees as part of their farm operation can have a sawmill as part of their farm operation to process those trees. So it's very different than a commercial sawmill where big logging trucks come in, dump the logs, they get sawed up and the boards get taken away. An on-farm sawmill is something different than a commercial sawmill. So I separated them out to recognize that forestry operations are included in the definition of what a farm is. So that's why it's there and called on farm. It's definitely not a typo.
Okay.
So Nan, if sawmills on farms have to be allowed, and we're permitting agriculture and farm operations in every single district, don't we have to permit or have ASPR for sawmill on farm in every single district to go with that?
It would be wherever there is a farm operation in a New York State Ag district. So is that what I hear you saying? I guess I'm not sure what you were, because it does.
Well,
I see.
I'm just comparing that we have Ps across the board for every single district for agriculture or farm operation. But for sawmill on farm, we have X's in Hamlet, Brooktondale, commercial, and perhaps in commercial, although I guess that's being changed to ASPR. So I'm just wondering if we're allowed to have any X's when we have said that agriculture can be anywhere.
Well, right. I mean, the better way of having this line on the table would be ASPR if it's in a New York State agricultural district, X if it's not. I mean, assuming you want to prohibit them. So that's typically how it's done. So if it's in a New York State ag district, it has abbreviated site plan review. If it's not in a New York State ag district, you can do whatever you want. The state doesn't care what you do with them. If they only care about what's on in a New York ag district.
All right, I'm gonna suggest that we leave it as P in ag rural district, even if it's not in the ag district, the New York State ag district.
Yeah.
Generally, farms are far enough apart. I think that meets the general ethic of Caroline. I think as a practical matter, there aren't going to be ag districts inside of Brookendale Commercial, but I'm okay with then making the separation that Nan just suggested, that everywhere else in all other zones, if it's an ag district, of course, it's permitted, and if it's not, it's ASPR.
Okay,
I agree with that.
Oh, wait, I just want to make sure I have my notes right. So permitted if it's in an ag district, ASPR if it's not.
No.
Except for in the ag rural district, it's a
Except-
P everywhere, whether or not it's
Gotcha.
an ag district.
Gotcha.
Then I have a question, then why not in the commercial?
Well, it's ASPR.
You mean, why not just permitted?
Yeah,
Because I guess if it were, do we have on-farm sawmills in commercial districts?
We've only got one commercial district, right? The one on,
Well, as of right now, we're just thinking in general.
I
So-
see, yeah.
No, I get Bruce's philosophical point. I don't, I think the reason for having ASPR in the hamlets is because we're expecting there to be residential uses close by. Our commercial zone is our commercial district, is a little mixed right now. And so I think there could be reasons for having ASPR there because you still have residences close to those commercial uses. And so then if someone had a farm there and put sawmill on it, I could see having ASPR there. So I guess that's how I'd answer Bruce, is I'm not wedded one way or the other, but I see the reason for maybe keeping ASPR in the commercial district.
And it's a one meeting talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing that, with the
But I
agriculture,
can go either way on that one.
okay, well, I'm gonna suggest, hearing that with the agricultural uses as it is with ASPR under sawmill in the commercial column. And understanding that we're going to have a note about what the CAFO means. And the reasonable setbacks when we get to the setback side. Does anyone have any issues with this in general and want to amend that? Hearing none, are people willing to accept this for the purpose of putting this into our second draft of this document? And if so, please say yes.
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 I think we should go over it.
What?
I said, I
Go
was thinking
over-
I would like to look it over once we make the changes here and look at the chart. But
Well, accepting it for tonight, and yes, if we make a mistake when we come back again, but I've got in order to make the changes, I want to have people's agreement that we're making the right changes.
okay.
Okay? So everyone's good with that? Will?
Yep.
Is Will
Okay.
still there? Okay.
Yeah, she may,
Okay.
could be internet problems.
It is now 9:06, and I have a couple of things I want to do before we conclude this meeting. And I don't think we're going to get to all of the commercial uses. Do you want to try any of it? Let's give it 4 more minutes and just sort of run down. So here we've got accessory structures, which we have a bunch of question marks across.
I think I had a note there. I'd have to see what my note is. The note is to be reviewed and permitted. Oh, I don't know. That was highlighted. The comment is to be reviewed and permitted as part of a site plan review and/or special permit processing. Maybe I misunderstood. Did anybody have any comments about this?
I didn't.
Okay.
Nan, do you have any comments to say about this? Why do we have question marks?
I don't know. I mean, usually accessory structures are just permitted as, they go along with whatever else the commercial use might have. They include things like storage sheds, dumpsters, signs. They usually just go along with, and they're permitted along and reviewed along with whatever else is being proposed.
I think what happened there, this is really dumb. I think I couldn't figure out how to write all the way across there. I couldn't figure out how to cut and paste that sentence to be reviewed and permitted. And so I misunderstood that there was a comment. So ignore those question marks.
And what they should be P's? Is that what you're saying?
No, they should be nothing. And instead, there should be the sentence to be reviewed and permitted as part of the site plan review and/or special use permit processes. Existing commercial uses shall require SPR. That sentence is supposed to go in there all the way across.
Okay.
Does that make
Got it.
sense?
Yes, and there should be nothing in those boxes.
There should be nothing in those boxes.
No dividers, just one sentence running all the way across, I
Okay.
think. is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Okay, let's go on to adult uses, which sounds so much more fun.
Quick question.
Yep.
Could you just quickly recap what you just said? Because I just got booted out of Zoom and back in again and didn't hear a thing.
No, we're done. We're done. We can't go over it anymore. We finished the whole thing. You're gonna have to wait.
Has been beaten.
Michelle goofed up when she wrote this line. That line should not be there. It should just be a sentence that says to be reviewed. Go ahead and read what the sentence should be.
It's supposed to say, to be reviewed and permitted as part of site plan and or special use permit processes, existing commercial uses shall require SPR.
Okay, so that's what should be in that whole line, and there's no columns. It's just supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Got that, Will? It's just a note.
If what is it, if what's in the original draft.
It's what's in the original draft.
Yeah.
Michelle
How's that?
she just made a mess. There.
I can't type fast enough to type the whole thing Michelle said, but there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody's gonna send me an email, right? Because
yes,
I have no idea what you're looking at.
We're gonna redo this chart and move ahead. We're not even probably gonna vote on much of commercial uses tonight because we're running out of time. But let's go on for adult uses, and we have a law in the town of 1999 about what a law, where they should be, and mostly it says things like this far away from a church and this far away from a school. So the question is, are we allowing adult uses in, which essentially means things like a strip club, a place that sells pornographic movies. That's essentially what those things mean. Right as of now, we have X's across and an SPR in the commercial use.
I was just taking a guess at that as to where you might allow them. And I put it, it's the same set of uses as auction house. I thought that seemed appropriate.
Can auction them off.
Nathan, do you have any suggestions about adult uses, or do we?
Well,
Jane,
other than just to keep in mind that out of all of these uses, adult uses are you have very limited ability to regulate them because it's actually been determined to be part of free speech. So you have to allow them somewhere.
Okay.
You can limit them, but you can't prohibit them everywhere. So that's so wherever, I mean, commercial uses, that's typically where they go. Some people try and limit them to the very tiniest little part of the town as possible, but I think that that's a typical way of addressing it. But that means that you might have to, the town board might have to go back and make some changes to the actual adult use law.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, Gene. We did.
To make changes to this law. And Bruce, what are you saying?
We did bring that up to the town board. I believe Tim will remember that they should, because it states something about, I believe, the footage closer to a school than it is to some other stuff. It really needs to be rewritten.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. That's certainly on the list.
Okay. And at the moment, because of what Nan said, I think it should be X's across and the SPR.
In the commercial district.
In the commercial district, yes. Okay. And then we're going on to, we're gonna finish this page, God help me. The artist studio, instructional space, and maker space. What is this? Go ahead.
Oh, I added that as because of the comment that, those scenarios I put out. And I think Nan said that the last one would count as an artist studio instructional space. And we don't have that in the terminology anywhere.
Okay.
So I just threw that in there saying that it would be allowed everywhere. Basically thinking of using an existing building that you turned into studios that you rented out.
But you had a reason for making it site plan review and not P. And I believe that had to do with some of these uses potentially having toxic materials involved. Remind me of your reasoning.
Yeah, because, most of these studios, like say you have a woodworking studio or something, you're gonna have varnishes, you're gonna have solvents. There's
Right.
gonna have to be a place, if it's a group of studios that are being rented out, they're gonna have to have water and toilets and stuff like that.
Right.
Is any part of that regulated already by the state in terms of like containment for solvents, et cetera?
Oh, I have no idea, actually.
Yeah, as far as if you have like a wood shop or stuff like that, anything where you would be finishing, it would tell you how you had to store stuff and how much you could have on site and all of that, I believe.
Nan, you have any insight?
Yeah, I'd have to do some research on that. I'm not sure about it might be based on volume. It's like, if you have beyond a certain amount stored, then it would have to have some sort of proper storage. I don't know. I'd have to look into it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
And so let's
So
leave that.
before
site
signing
plan
off an
review.
SPR, I would need to know more.
Yes, okay. So let's keep that in red and know that we have to come back to it. And let's talk about auction house. So she has auction house in commercial. That's where they have been. I don't think we have any at the moment, but we could. Do auction houses ever occur in ag rural areas? I would assume sometimes. I don't know.
I would think that would be the most usual place for an auction house, is some old barn somewhere where some stuff gets stored and then laid out all over the yard and sold off to the highest bidder.
I mean, I think some of these are based on discussions we had before when we first looked at it. So I didn't change anything here. I only put in.
No.
Yeah.
No, I would tend to permit them everywhere. Seems fairly innocuous occupation as far as.
Well, there's a lot of parking involved. I mean, I've been to auction houses and they take up huge fields full of parking.
Yeah, I wouldn't permit them in a hamlet, I think, for the parking reason, but I would have no trouble with the ag zone.
But they're not all the same size, right?
Right. Yes, they're not all the same size, but anywhere in the hamlet, if you had, 20 cars show up, you've got a parking issue.
All right, so I'll raise the question. I suppose we could say auction house small, auction house large, and someone has to come up. But
yeah.
I guess I'm tending to think that, yeah, not all, but, I mean, if you look at the Beesner Hamlet, for example, it might be possible to have one there somewhere that, but, that also sort of goes against the general philosophy of trying to keep that as a more residential hamlet. So I guess I would weigh in on saying, okay, it's going to be allowed in ag rural, allowed in commercial. We'll tend to keep the traffic out of the more densely populated hamlets and then wait to see what the public says.
That's true. That's a good idea.
One thing I would say about an auction house is, if it's a large auction house, they're only going to have probably maybe at the most 2 auctions a week, and one of them would be on the weekend at least, and that might create a problem in a denser populated area. That's the only thing I'll say.
Okay. So I'm thinking at this point, we're seeing putting it in the ag zone from what I'm hearing and making that SPR and leaving the rest, the hamlets as X's.
I'm agnostic on SPR versus P versus SUP. I don't know enough.
Okay. Well, I say let's not finish with this one this week and go off and think about it, because I really want to finish a few things that we have to do.
Maybe, it might be worth, I mean, at Slaterville, there's plenty of, I could see having it in Slaterville someplace.
Okay. Auction. Let's go think. I'm putting auction on the list of things to think about. Okay. So let's go back to where I can see some faces, if possible.
Okay, I will stop sharing.
Let me find my. Hi, everyone. we got a lot of comments in chat. I'm gonna print that out and I will attach it and send it with like comments and questions I get in this week so people all see it. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 8th. After some email back and forth, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be in, I'm gonna be flying that day, so I won't be, I may not be arrive in time to be on the meeting.
Laying in bed.
I don't know who
Just
Scott
laying
is,
on a
but
bed.
I'm hearing that voice. I think. Okay, so, Tim will chair that meeting, Tim Murray. And that way everybody can participate because everybody else on the committee would have a hard time doing that. And he can chair that meeting. What I would really like to do is see if we have some sense if on March 8th, we think we could finish these use tables, which would be the commercial, to a point of having it put into a draft 2 format that we could get up on the website by a week after that, perhaps. And then we could schedule a public meeting. And my idea for scheduling a public meeting would be to do that. Let me take out a calendar because that will help. Something like maybe Thursday the 24th and Sunday the 27th. Or we could do another week and do March 31st and April 3rd. What do people think? Because I really want to try to get a public meeting scheduled and have us work towards that.
Gene, no one wants a public information session sooner than I do, but I think we need to get through this whole use table and the dimensions table. And I honestly cannot say how many more meetings that's going to take. I would love to say we have a meeting at the end of March like we first sketched out. I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see. I think it's going to take us 2 more meetings to get through the use table and the dimensions table. So that's looking more like sometime in April for the next information session, but you know, that's a guess. And maybe we need to wait another meeting to make that decision, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can figure that out on the 8th then, for sure. Anybody else want to talk to this?
Yeah, this is Bruce. I'm kind of wondering how we could come up with, you know, a second draft on this that quickly too, just because there are some things on there we haven't come to
Articles
a
2 and
consensus
3.
on.
Only
Right.
of Articles 2 and 3, because we've already come to a great consensus pretty much on the maps, which is a lot of Article 2. And we're moving through Article 3.
Oh, okay, well, there's another one of my questions. I don't know how we can have a great consensus on the maps when we haven't come to a consensus on what zones are where, or all the zones. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
I guess what I think is for draft 2, we will say to people that this is where we are at this point. But I think if we don't hold a public meeting soon with some information coming back from what people have given us, that we will have failed in our responsibility to be able to talk to people.
I believe we need to know what we're talking about too.
Right.
When we
Bruce, are
have
you
the-
suggesting you have a serious problem with the state the maps are in, that you have big objections to those?
No, the maps?
Right.
Did you ask me about the maps?
I asked about the maps, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that we should been discussing some more about bigger or more different areas for commercial business than what we did. We talked, but we never came to a real consensus on it. I mean, we don't have to, because I'm sure that, like I said, this isn't the last one, but then the same thing within in this format, when it came to the conservation subdivisions, we never really came in on that either. And when we're offering it back up again in the print as if it's a done deal or something that we have already decided, and we really
No, I
haven't.
don't think we've decided it at all. And I thought I said that pretty clearly. We need to talk about it. And I hope we'll have part of that conversation as at the next meeting.
Okay, well, like I said, if we can come up with the idea of, that's what we all come to a consensus on before we put this back out again then I'm just fine with it.
All right, and so what I'm
But I-
hearing also from you is that you might want to have a conversation about additional commercial, either expanded or additional commercial districts before we present a map to the public again. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Bruce?
Yes, because I
Okay,
believe
put-
that
put
when
that on
you
the agenda.
offer, when you offer a map with the borders of the hamlets on there, then you're leaving it up to you're not gonna put any commercial area in there anywhere. If it's already established as the hamlet, as far as, like I said, I just think we needed to have that talk
Okay.
a long time ago. I asked about it multiple times and it just kept saying we would talk about it later. And we just need to talk about it because we need to come up with something. Well, I guess it really does, because once it goes to the public, I'm sure it'll come up without any question. But if we had a better idea, because when I look at the new maps now, even the commercial area in Sladeville's gone, which doesn't make any sense to me.
So Bruce, I have to interrupt you there, that Sladeville, all of it's commercial. I mean, commercial uses are allowed and the size is 5,000 square feet, larger than any other hamlet. And that comment came out in public in the Pillars of the Floor that why isn't there a commercial zone in Sladeville Springs? Well, Sladeville Springs, basically the whole darn hamlet allows more commercial activity, larger commercial activity than any other hamlet. So the whole
Well, then
thing
the
is
new
a-
map
it-
should be colored so that they can see that.
No,
Because-
it's a hamlet. It doesn't mean there's no businesses in the hamlet. Brookendale commercial is different because we're putting different size limits on Brookendale center part than the outer Brookendale part. We're not making any
Okay.
distinction like that on Sladeville Springs. It's allowed everywhere in Sladeville Springs. So that's why there's no Sladeville Springs commercial designated, because the whole darn thing is sort of one of their more commercial areas.
Okay,
Yeah, that
well, when you
seems to
show
be-
me a
that
new
seems
map
to-
with the colors on it, and you understand that, because I guess you're more knowledgeable on it than I am, but when I look at that new map that came out and I read the color chart that tells me what it is, it shows
See,
me that
let me
there's.
just interject.
Bruce,
This is-
Bruce, you have to look at the map along with the use table and the dimension table. You cannot just look at the map or colors on the map. You have to look at the use table and the dimensions table and compare that with what's on the map.
Right.
And
But
maybe you
that's
should
why
call
we
it
run into
Sladeville
problems.
Springs mixed use. Would that, I mean, I'm not being facetious. Would it help if the name was not Sladeville Springs Hamlet, but Sladeville Springs mixed use area?
I believe it would, because what you're also looking at is you're looking at people who aren't gonna pull this whole thing up and go through the whole thing. They're gonna pull that map up and look at it and ask you exactly what I just asked you,
Okay,
without any question.
I see Will, and then I'm gonna have Will ask a question, then I'm gonna turn to Nan.
Okay, thank you.
Will? You're welcome.
Yeah, I would say seriously, you need to change the legend because it sure wasn't obvious to me. And as you know, I was at home having a heart attack looking at that map. It really wasn't obvious.
Okay,
What do you say it? What do you mean by it, Will? Just so I'm clued into what you're thinking.
The map that was sent out today made it look like nothing in Sladeville was going to be a commercial district.
But commercial
let me-
uses are allowed in all the zones.
Yeah,
All
so,
right, then go.
you know, I want to just reiterate what Barb said, is that, I mean,
No,
we
you
can
don't
certainly
have to
add,
repeat it.
we
I'm
can certainly,
just,
you turned yourself off. Will, you've turned your mic off. Your mic is
So-
still off.
Yeah, no, so it sounds like from Bruce and Will that we need, that something needs to be done to help make this more clear, that there's an issue with, and I agree, I understand that if the map is colors, and then to understand what the colors mean, you have to go to the use table and the dimensions table. That's a lot of work, but I honestly don't know, other than simple, I don't know how to make that more clear. So maybe you all need to think hard about that, and maybe it's a name change, but
I think the name-
when I hear things like, oh, the only commercial area is that little pink area, it's called commercial because that's where like the biggest, most,
Right.
obtrusive commercial activities are. It doesn't mean there's no businesses anywhere else in town, right? We're trying to be very careful to allow as many possible uses everywhere in town as possible. And so they're, 5,000 square foot businesses are allowed in Cedarville Springs, 3,000 square foot businesses are allowed in the center part of Brookendale, and that's the footprint of the building. If they've got 2 floors, they can have 6,000 or 10,000 square feet. So it's not like they're not allowed anywhere. But I agree, we have to get the information out.
The map can have large letters on it that say, do not use this map unless you're also looking at the use table and the dimensions table. Pay no attention to this map on its own.
Okay,
Well, like I said, that just, it goes back to the thing that you expect the public to have this whole document in front of them when they're looking at things, and they don't.
Bruce, you're
And
playing this
therefore
too.
that
Don't
leads
take
them
you.
astray
Do not
to ask
use
this
you.
question. What?
Will, your mic is off, and if you want to speak, please, can you speak? Because your mic is off.
I
Yeah.
was just making the point that exactly what Bruce is saying. Nobody clued me in. I was home having a heart attack looking at that new map. I now understand you don't need to re-explain it to me, but there was nothing I received that explained what you just explained now. And yes, I could have looked at everything, but it just wasn't happening that way.
Okay. I think it's hard because if you did get it, you didn't understand that other people didn't get it. So now we're understanding that. Michelle?
No, I just want to say, because I spent so much time on this weekend about and taking, so many people had comments that we needed more commercial uses in all the hamlets. And I included that on the use tables. So are you saying it wasn't clear from the use tables, or is there a better way to coordinate the use tables and the maps? I mean, the maps are just for the boundaries. I mean, the use tables are what's important, and that tells you where things are allowed. And basically there's commercial retail allowed everywhere practically. So
Yes,
I thought you would be happy about that.
Michelle, when I talked to you, I was feeling really encouraged. And that was yesterday. And the map came all on its own as an update. And then I thought, okay, I must have totally misunderstood because it wasn't matching the way it had been presented before. And it's a simple thing, just fix the
I get it. It occurred to me that. So
I just want to say one more thing that came up to me, actually, when I was looking at this stuff, is I'm not sure what the point of having a commercial district in Brookendale is, since we're allowing so much commercial everywhere. I wasn't sure what we were going to get from that, and I was hoping we could have a discussion about that at some point, but.
I'm going to put that on my list.
Yeah.
I think maybe the next meeting will have to be a lot of these discussions.
Yeah.
And along the lines of people saying that the things are too complicated, what Michelle says would be one way of simplifying the map, for sure, as would going down to 2 or 3 zones. And if you want to have that discussion, we can do that too. But, yes, I think there was a purpose in that being different. Nan can help explain her reasoning. But yeah, let's have a discussion at another meeting. I agree.
Okay. Nan, do you have anything you want to say at this point?
Just to reiterate that the zoning law, the text and the map are intricately related. They're both part of the law. So they have to work together. You can't just read the map and you can't just read the text. They really go together. So I know it's hard. It's something that most people aren't familiar with. And I think that we can come up with a step 1, step 2, step 3 to help people understand the progression of how you look at it. You find out where you are, then you look at the use table, then you look at the dimensions table. I think we can explain those steps better, and we can certainly label the map better. But I think everybody has to realize that the map and the text are intricately related, and you can't just look at one without the other. So that's all.
Okay. Before we close tonight, I'd like to ask do we want to try to schedule more meetings or lengthen our meetings at all? We're at 2 hours. We could go from 7 to 9:30 and get 2.5 hours in for the next time, or continue to do that. Anybody, I think I'll ask this a question in email this week, and I'll try to get that out tomorrow to have people think about that and look at your lives. I think we've got the 8th set. It looks to me like we've got a lot of stuff to do before we can bring Articles 2 and 3 in back, as well as the terms. Because I think you can't really understand Article 2 or 3 without having the complete terms. And maybe Article 1, I mean, we're pretty much agreed on Article 1. Yeah, so we can have Article 1, 2, 3 and the terms. And when we had a public meeting, and I wouldn't feel like I had to tear my hair out. Which I'm considering just doing the whole thing. Anything else for tonight? Thank you, everyone. It's, it's been real. I have to make sure I copy the chat. So I'm going to do that before I close the meeting, but feel free to say that we are adjourned at 9:34.
I second.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everybody, for your incredibly hard work.
Thanks. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
All right, I'm gonna say, I know I probably sounded exasperated a few times tonight. I apologize to everyone for that. It is something I do sometimes, and I get excited and I sound a little angry or exasperated. I apologize. I think, Will, I probably took it out on you a little bit, so sorry.
I've already sent out an apology today myself, and I don't even have your hair to account for the fact that I got freaking irritated. So, but I want you all to know that this is time off in purgatory for everyone. None of us are going to have to spend one day in purgatory, is my theory. So, anyone else? Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.